Good evening, and welcome to a new edition of Real World News TV. I'm one of your hosts, Reggie Kearney, and I have with me Sherry Ann Taffet and Tony Breelove. How you ladies doing this evening?
You're cute, Reggie. You're real cute.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what is going on here?
Uh,
You give me a heart attack.
These little devil horns are coming out there.
Exactly.
how y'all doing this evening, huh? How y'all doing?
I'm tired. That's how I am. Yeah. Tired.
Right. Well,
but we're here.
let me just say something. A new week, same. Okay.
Bullshit.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Tony.
I don't even know what he just said.
Truly, that has really, that's what's ending up to be the same. A new week, same old crap. Lost another young man to the guns of a police officer this past week down in Atlanta, Georgia. We had a guy who's supposed to be our president on TV today with some type of executive order, which didn't address none of the issues. Anytime you get the FOP to support you, it's very little substance in it. And we just got to figure out where we are and where we're going. The protests are still taking place. Richmond, Virginia has really been off the hook this week. That little town, about 200,000 people has, or might be 150. They have really been going at it this week down in Richmond. So bad that the mayor fired the police chief today down in Richmond, Virginia. Then we had a police chief in Atlanta. She resigned. So it's been a tough week. In the news arena. So we want to discuss. Go back, discuss what happened last week. Look at the different executive orders that were handed down by mayors of some of the major cities. Talk about that and just talk about where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Crump said last week in an interview he had, I think during the funeral or after the funeral of George Floyd, that he felt like in 30 days another young black man would die. He said it wasn't even a week. Wasn't even a week. So Sherry Ann, give me your take on the past week's activities and today's activities.
The one thing, I get goosebumps thinking about some of these other deaths that we've learned about, and I've been in back and forth discussions with people online about how they perceive what occurred. And again, I think excessive use of force. The man was inebriated. The police officers knew that. The interaction started well enough. There was a scuffle. He grabbed the taser somehow in the midst of that scuffle and ran away. But the tasers, as the police would have us believe, are not lethal. So it was a non-lethal weapon in his hand, and he's running away. And even as he turns around and he's got it held up in his hand, it's a non-lethal weapon, and there were two police officers there. So even if he had been able to shoot it and impact one of the police officers, who really have so much gear on them anyway, I'd be surprised it'd have any effect. His partner was there to back him up. I do not think it was necessary to shoot this man to stop him or to shoot him at all. You look at all of these videos of white people who are on meth or drunk, acting out, physically fighting back with the police, running, coming at them with machetes or hatchets and having guns on their person. They aren't shot. They're topped down, it's de-escalated, or they run after them and they chase them. And, I was speaking to somebody about that today, and I said, it's strange. Well, not strange, but as I'm trying to figure out the psychology behind this, it seems as though there's an ingrained, learned behavior that a person of color is supposed to submit in all situations. Be subjugate, submit, submissive, not fight back for their rights, not ask questions, not question authority. But when they have a white criminal or culprit or person that they're detaining, they're given an air of respect and consideration that just doesn't seem to exist in their standard operating procedures when dealing with people of color. There is a presumption of guilt. There's a presumption of criminality. There is an assumption that this person is, as we said before, capable of Herculean feats.
Well,
Poor training. I don't think that he shot him consciously because he was black. I thought he shot him because he was poorly trained. And it was a very unfortunate situation. But I do think that he should be held accountable for it.
Well, when it comes to training, these police officers are trained to kill, okay? That's just the bottom line of it, okay?
But they're not trained to kill white people. They don't, that doesn't happen then. Okay?
Well, through my research, there have been some white individuals killed. They just don't get the high network
profile.
as
I mean, it happens.
Black
It does happen, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it does happen.
Seem to happen with the same frequency.
Yeah, so it doesn't become a whole high-profile case, but when you go back and you look at what happened in Atlanta, okay, you have to use common sense as a police officer, okay? All right. Now, this guy, had been drinking. He probably wouldn't have ran no further. He probably would have ran down the street and probably tripped over the curb trying to get away.
Exactly. He wasn't a good runner. You could see it.
Yeah. The second cop could have got him, okay, because when he turned, if you look at the video, when he turned and shot the other police officer with the taser, it did hit him. It stopped him for a second, so the other guy could have got him, okay? But these guys, feel like, okay, they feel like anything that's pointed at them is lethal, okay? Now, I was looking at the news tonight, and the prosecutor in DeKalb County prosecuted a case a couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, where they said the use of the stun gun was a lethal weapon, okay? All right.
Oh, because it was in the other guy's hands. But
yeah,
when it's in their hands and they're sending somebody into a coma, it's not.
Yeah. Now he's reversed his thought process and said that this case, it wasn't a lethal weapon, so the police officer shouldn't have shot him. Now he's got to get his stuff together. Okay, it's either a lethal weapon or it's not a lethal weapon. Okay, you can't have both of them. You can't have it for one case and say it's a lethal weapon, then turn around for another case and say it's not a lethal weapon. Okay, and that's first thing. The attorney, the state's attorney, the prosecutor got to get that together first. Okay, that doesn't take away from the fact that it was still bad shooting, but he got to get his thought process together. Because what's going to happen, I don't care if he gets an all-black jury or a half jury or a Hispanic jury, they're going to end up in my opinion, they might end up going with a police officer, okay? Just because this prosecutor can't decide on what's lethal and what's not lethal, okay?
Well, if they do decide that it's lethal, that's going to open up a whole can of worms for all those instances where police officers overly use the stun gun and put people into vegetative states and comas, give them heart attacks. That is going. They need to be careful right now. I hope they step in it. I really do, because then they're going to have a whole bunch of cases come back at them. Yeah.
So the whole idea of bringing the stun gun in was to limit these shootings, okay, lethal shootings. But it seems like it's escalated them, okay. So what is right and what is wrong? Who knows? But when you look at Dylan Roof, they took him when they picked him up down in North Carolina. They took him to Burger King. The boy said he was hungry.
What? Please, they'll probably blame him. They'll say that I thought I was grabbing my stun gun, but it was my gun instead because he grabbed the stun gun from me, and they'll blame it on him.
He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. He felt when he got
actually had his hand on his gun.
Yeah.
Before Rayshard turned around to deploy that stun gun.
Yeah. He felt after he got hit by that stun gun, he was in danger. So the only thing for him to do was to shoot somebody running away from him in the back. Okay, come on now. They had the guy's license. They had the guy's license. They had his car.
They could have found him.
They could have found him later on.
Yeah. They just had a cordial conversation about what is his mother's funeral and his kid's birthday and all of this stuff. I'd like to know, just for my own edification, not because I think it's going to change things significantly, but I'd like to know what happened in that instance. Number one, they didn't have to escalate it and put him in handcuffs. He was not a danger to anybody. They could have given him a ride home.
He's black. Don't get rides home if he's black.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm saying that was their choice. He offered to walk home. Exactly. Yeah. He wasn't drinking and driving. They could have given him a ticket. They could have given him a ticket for parking in a fakakta way. And then it was a ticketable offense, no more, no less.
It was not a ticketable offense. He moved the car. That should have been the end of the case. Took his keys and said, okay, you come by the police station tomorrow, pick your keys up. We can either take you to your sister's house or you can walk. Okay. And that was in the situation. Okay. DeRon said that the lawyer, the state's attorney for DeKalb County, who is an African American, is a Republican also. You don't know where this thing is going. Okay. But
I just want to see them do something that is going to be satisfactory to those who are watching, because we've had enough. All we need is one more acquittal and people are going to lose their minds.
Well, Atlanta might well get ready and burn it down. They might well go ahead and do a pre-burning, because they're not going to get what they want down there. Okay. This guy is not going to go hard on this police officer. He might come back and say no charge. He might not file any charges. They say he could file simple assault charges. Okay.
It's not going to be enough.
I mean, the first thing that I thought was the man was drunk and obviously scared shitless. Like, who's thinking? And when the police have killed so many, in succession recently, in that moment, I mean, something flipped in his mind, and he just freaked out.
He ran, and he ran for his life.
And they would have shot him whether he had that taser or not. I honestly believe that.
Right. I
honestly believe that. So, the one thing that I am hopeful about is, there's been this list that's been circulating about all of the things that have been accomplished since the protests have started. And if we can keep this momentum, if we can keep the protests going, if we can keep the pressure on the mayors and the police precincts, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on right now that's good, that should have been happened, like the removal of Confederate flags and statues, and certain municipalities banning chokeholds, which should have happened a long time ago. Firing various police officers who should have been fired. Now, Trump's legislation, his executive order, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, but the only thing that did stand out to me when I heard a brief snippet about it online when I got home this evening was that he's banning chokeholds
to a certain extent.
Exception of
but it's only in the event
that their life is in danger.
Right.
Which is their argument now.
They're going to keep choking black men.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Kamala Harris was on the news earlier talking about changing the wording from reasonable, reasonable force to something along the lines of, was it necessary? Could have been de-escalated. Because all weekend people were sending me videos of other people literally getting the life choked out of them, and this is like a how you can drown on dry land. You've got people being hung vertically, because one video I saw earlier, and I didn't catch the gentleman's name. He was handcuffed, he was surrounded, he was on the ground, and this cop, who must have weighed over 200 pounds, deliberately sat on this man's back, bunched his arms up, and then leaned on his chest and neck. And you could hear him saying, "I don't care if he dies." His lungs collapsed, he winds up in the hospital on a respirator, and he eventually does die. Now, I have to go back and find that video to see if there were any repercussions for this police officer, but unnecessary. That should be considered murder, point blank.
He's a police officer. He's a white police officer. It's a black man that he's doing it to. He is not guilty of doing anything wrong, okay? You know, I was looking at the ABC special tonight talking about 1992 in LA when they had the LA riots, and they were showing in police training where a maneuver such as a chokehold was a legal maneuver for many years out there. Well, basically, it's like a karate move where you can put the person in a chokehold and put them to sleep. Okay, that was a legal hold to use in California for years, and it killed some individuals too. Yeah. It killed some individuals because they showed this one young man who was killed at 20 years old because of that chokehold that they used. Okay, so the whole thing is the police, the officers have had too much power and continue to have too much power, and they have a lot of immunity from doing things against the law for us. If I go choke you tonight, Sharon, I'm going to jail. Okay.
Yeah, catch me first, but yeah.
I will. I'll catch you. You kind of slow right now. I'll catch you. You know, but so I will go to jail. Okay. Now, if I was a police officer and choked you, I'm not going to jail. I can make up an excuse on why I had you in a chokehold. And that's what
Somebody
the whole problem.
Significantly smaller than you, who weighs a few stones.
I'm threatened. You threatened me. I felt like you're going to take my life.
You know, if these guys are that threatened by some of these individuals, they literally have no business working in law enforcement. Go behind a desk. Don't be out in the field. Seriously.
Yeah. And you know, I was on the way home this evening, and there was, because I always listen to Michael Baston in the evening when I'm coming home. And he had this woman on there who was a former police officer. I believe she said it was in Philadelphia. I can't remember. But those were her exact comments, is that if you join the police force, you know that you're going to come up against something that is going to be adversarial. You know the dangers of it. So if you are afraid to tackle those dangers, then why did you join the police force? Because you can't be afraid of everything that's out there.
Or at least know how to manage your fear.
Exact point. Yeah.
I mean, fear is reasonable. It's a human response, but at least learn how to manage it and control it so that it's not controlling you into murder.
Well, you got a gun and you got a stun gun. You can do whatever you want to do, okay? That's just the bottom line of it. You know, you can do whatever you want to do. If you're a white cop, you know, like I said, you look at the black cop in Minneapolis who accidentally shot that white woman. He got 12 years, and they charged him the next day. You know, they didn't waste no time in charging him.
They didn't have to investigate. They didn't have to look at what happened before in the video. They didn't have to see what she said. If she's antagonistic, they didn't have to do any of that business.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You know, and so we really got some issues. And I was looking at a snippet from CNN today of a black sheriff in Burke County, Georgia, and he was saying, okay, this was his rationale. Both killings of Aubrey Edwards, and he went to school with Aubrey Edwards' mother, and the killing of George Floyd, they were off the hook. He said, look, no, okay, they were murders. Basically, that was it. Now, he teaches classes in the use of force, okay, in the state of Georgia. And he has taught many classes, okay, many classes. Now, he said that this case right here with the young man in Atlanta is going to be a tough case for these reasons, okay? You know, in determining whether or not this was a lethal weapon, okay, determining the fear factor, along with some other things. His feeling is that it's not going to go well for the person who was killed. That 9 times
But
out of
that
10,
stun gun, Reggie, the stun gun in Atlanta had already been deemed non-lethal
but the thing is,
various other.
yeah, I know. But the thing is, it's a judgment call, and that's the whole problem. You either got to pass a law to say stun guns are lethal and have it in the handbook, or they're not, and that's the whole thing. Because like he said, when you get hit by, he said he trains these guys in the use of the stun guns. And he said, when you get hit with a stun gun, he said, everybody he's taught, he's hit them with a stun gun and let them know how it feels and show the other one. When you hit somebody with a stun gun, it's like a 5 seconds go by when your body is paralyzed. Okay.
But his partner was there. If he was alone, I could understand that. But he had backup. He had a partner there who was not hit by a stun gun, who was in full control of his faculties. So the fear for your life argument here, I agree with you in all likelihood. We're not going to get what we want out of this case, but I'm not buying the fear for my life business. And the other thing too is if all of these police officers are trained to know what a stun gun feels like, then that just means they're even bigger sadistic assholes than I imagine, given how many times we see them on video multiply, hitting somebody with a stun gun multiple times in one session.
Or playing with it, getting a kick out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm hoping and keeping my fingers crossed that the prosecutor in Georgia would do the right thing. I still think the killing was not justified, especially when you're shooting somebody in the back, running away from you. And, oh yeah, forgot. 2017, this same officer was involved in a case in a situation that involved a gun. Now, this is my thing. First thing they need to do, and I got a lot of friends who are police officers, love them to death, but this police unions need to go. They need to figure out something with them, okay? All right, because my feeling is if you have one incident where you have a problem and somebody files a complaint with you or about you because of the usage of your gun or pulling it out or doing whatever, you need to get kicked off that police force, okay? Because you see what happened. 2017 has a problem. 2020 he killed someone, okay? He should have been let go in 2017. Giving all these chances and writing these guys up, that's got to stop.
I agree with you for the most part, although the first thing that I think of is if we were to do something like that, you see how many Darrens and Karens are out there filing, making life difficult for people as it is. All you would need is somebody to go, that black cop or that Hispanic cop or that Asian cop did X. There you have a complaint about them on the file, and then they're gotten rid of. So I think you would still need some degree of objectivity and investigation into a complaint to just check its validity. But I think the more egregious the complaint, if it smacks of racism or misogyny or excessive force or a murder, then definitely that shows an inclination, a mental instability, somebody who has no business being a police officer.
Well, they got to do something because it's not going to stop. I mean, these cops don't realize that everything you do can be people are using their cell phones as video cameras now.
Well, you see in
still acting crazy.
In San Francisco on June 2nd, they passed a resolution preventing law enforcement from hiring officers with a history of misconduct. And I think that that's taken place in a couple of states and municipalities. So, I think that there is a trend going in the right direction. Again, we just have to keep the pressure up.
Yeah, we definitely got to do it now. Let's talk about the hangings, okay?
Oh, God.
Two hangings within a week in California.
I've read of 5 in the last couple of months.
Well, I'm talking about the last 2, because those are the only 2 that really hit the fan, okay? The first one, the first one I'm concerned with is the fact that they hung him, and I don't believe these were suicides, so that's why I say they hung him near the downtown area, not far from the police station, in that area, that general area. So if you're gonna commit suicide, would you take the time out to go commit suicide in an area where somebody's gonna find you right away, in an area that's well traveled?
First of all, I have a couple of comments on that. To the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong, I think most of the suicides by hanging that I'm aware of in my lifetime, that I've been made aware of, not the totality of them, have happened indoors in the privacy of someone's home. Secondly, I seriously call into question the notion that a Black man or a woman or young man or teenager, maybe not so much a teenager, but that a Black adult of any persuasion would hang themselves from a tree, knowing the psychological impact that that's going to have on the community, given the history that our people have with lynchings. To me, the first thing I thought when I read those articles is that this is a message. For the last 3 years, you've had the neo-right white supremacists whispering into Trump's ear and this administration's ear, passing all kinds of legislation against people of color, against women, against LGBT, et cetera. They had this beautiful crescendo of activity in their favor to pursue their agenda. Now, as a result of George Floyd, who has galvanized not only the nation, but people of color across the globe to, for once, stand up in unison and say enough is enough, and to protest not for a day, not for a couple of days, but for weeks. We are now seeing change take place. Now, hopefully it will grow to become more substantial. But I think that there's some supremacists out there who are feeling some kind of way about this, because this can completely turn the tide on the agenda that they've been pursuing for the last umpteen years. To me, those hangings were messages to the community.
And that's the part I agree with you with. I don't agree with they upset about the agenda not being fully implemented. I'm thinking that these individuals are sending a message, and I think you got a pocket of neo-Nazis and white supremacists that are trying so hard to hold on to the past. Okay, and for individuals that are out there at night, hanging out, walking the streets late at night by themselves, in this day and time, I wouldn't suggest it. Okay, because these white boys, they're crazy. Okay, and you putting yourself on the line. A group of white boys will pass by and see you walking down the street, and all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off in their brain, okay, and then you hung. I really believe that these individuals, this is just my opinion to the listeners and the viewers. In my opinion, these two young men in the last week or so were hung by white individuals with racist tendencies. Okay, that's my feeling. Okay, because blacks do commit suicide. Okay, but they commit suicide using guns or slitting their wrists and things of that nature. Okay, very seldom you hear of a black person hanging themselves. Okay,
let alone from a tree in a public place.
Thank you.
The very placement of that was a message.
Yeah. So there's an issue out there, and there's some things going on, So
well, we saw it after Ferguson, right? How many of the leaders for the protests in Ferguson were murdered over the course of the 5 years following those protests?
Yeah,
I think we're just seeing it happening quicker now. And then there was a woman, I think was in Florida. She and another woman were found murdered.
Yeah.
And she had just been on the news, very vocal, beautiful African-American woman. But they're claiming it had nothing to do with the protests. because
Right.
another woman was murdered who was a vet, who they say had nothing to do with the protests. And I say, how do you know?
Well, they arrested a black man down there. Now whether or not this black man did it, it's in Tallahassee, Florida. Whether or not he did it, it's suspect. It can always happen where they find somebody to take the fall. But they did arrest him, and I didn't read the article completely. Gives me the impression that he did have some, mental issues, that led him into this direction, but we won't know. But there's something going on in the air out there, okay? And we as African Americans, we have to be vigilant in knowing our surroundings, okay?
Yep.
And you just can't be out there late at night walking the streets by yourself. You need to be with a group of people.
A group, yes, not even just one, a group.
Yeah. So one comment that was made, there's been a couple of them, but one comment was made by Derek Terry. He said that stun guns are deemed non-lethal and non-threatening unless you have underlying conditions. I feel the issue with this case is that the use of deadly force when the person has clearly ran away from you with a stun gun is not justified. Hard to determine if he feared for his life, but his natural response was to reach for his gun and did not have to shoot, not one, not two, but 3 times, hitting him 2 times for running away from being arrested for drinking while sitting in the car.
Yeah.
So
a non-violent offense.
Yeah, and it was, that's why I say this. I mean, after I heard this prosecutor talk today, and the case that he did where he found it was a lethal weapon, then he's saying it's not a lethal weapon. That's kind of bothersome for me.
Well, I told you my theory on why he did that. Because if they flip the script and decide to call it a lethal weapon, it's going to call into question all the times they've used it against people who patently told the police officers, I have a heart condition.
Yeah.
A man was murdered in the street recently after telling police officers he had a heart condition, and they tased him anyway.
Yeah.
There's this tendency to use excessive force even when somebody is being compliant.
Yeah. Now, today, your favorite guy, the one up in the 1600 Black Lives Matter way, signed a little executive order. Okay, I'm not even thinking about executive order because I read it and it's full of BS. Okay, that's just the bottom line. It was a photo opportunity for him and a couple of black law enforcement officials, and they running around with no mask on their face. So hopefully, excuse me, Lord, and I didn't mean to say that, but they might get the coronavirus, okay? But look, check this out. How do you feel, about, and I'll be honest with you, about black folks who get pulled in by this individual for photo ops? Aubrey's family was there, and Bolton's family was there, okay? Now, from the comments I've been reading today, Merritt, the lawyer, he's been getting called out by the black community. And there was an attempt last night to call him to make sure that he didn't go to the White House today. Why do we get so caught up in having to go to the White House? You can visit the White House anytime as a tourist, okay?
I guess, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't think that it's a black and white answer, no pun intended. I think it's an opportunity of a lifetime, right? And many people, putting aside the horrific nature of the impetus for these press conferences, our culture has been weaned on the notion of fame and being on TV and being associated with famous people, whether we like them or not. Then you've got, the education factor. How informed are they of Trump and what his administration is doing? I'm not talking about the attorney because I expect him to.
I know, but the thing is, you done had 3 years to see this fool act like a fool.
But not everybody watches the news. Not everybody listens, and certainly we know Americans don't like to read. So, I think that, and then if they're convinced because their PR person is telling them that this is a good thing, they're going to be a part of history, this is going to be a major executive order that's going to change things and you're going to be a part of that, I can see how they can be sold on it if they aren't like us and just thoroughly entrenched and knowledgeable in how fraudulent this administration is. And then I think you've got various people who've sold their soul a long time ago, just like we've spoken in the past, you know, like the pastors who start churches because they believe in God and Catholicism and the Ten Commandments, but then wind up, you know, tithing everybody to the point where they have jets and multi-million-dollar mansions. They've lost their way. They don't give a shit anymore, pardon my French, because it's all about the dollars. And I think the Candace Owens of the world and the people like her who are getting on the pulpit, and I agree with you, Colleen, I get you, but we kind of have to do it. It's part of our job. But I think that there comes a point where some folks just give up. And they say to themselves, bless you, they say to themselves, I'm not going to get ahead by playing by the rules. I'm not going to get ahead by adhering to my morals and my ethics. So screw it all. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get mine. And they start sucking up that Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're sucking it up. They're drinking it by the gallon. Because, you know, the pictures, you know, okay, and this is another two things. The pictures he took in the White House, you know, those pictures are going to end up on his campaign ads, okay? Like he had done something for the Black community. And secondly, if this bill was so important, in your opinion, for the Black community, why weren't they outside with you for the signing? Okay? You know, so, I mean.
You know, this coming from the man who's, no one loves the Black community more than he does, don't you know? You know, no one has done more for us than he has.
Yeah, he wanted to execute the Central Park 5, okay?
Yeah, I'm being facetious, obviously, but if he cared so much about people of color and the African American community and the Black and brown communities and minority communities and ethnic and immigrant and all of that, he would have already done something about legislation to make sure that we are treated justly, fairly, and with equity with respect to the law. This, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't even think they're drinking it anymore. I think they're snorting it and freebasing it. But it's not about that. As you said, it's a photo op. It's a tick on a box to say, look what I did. When in actuality, he did nothing. And when you were talking about the executive order, it reminded me of how he handled this whole COVID business. He did not a damn thing but attempt to steal the thunder from all of the mayors and governors of the nation that actually did the work, from the CDC and the WHO that actually did the work. The presidential guidelines on how to beat COVID are 2 pages of maybe 10 bullets, which is an extremely simplified snippet of CDC guidelines that have long since been published. So once again, he's stealing someone else's homework because he's seeing what's happening in these other cities, states, and municipalities where they're getting rid of the chokehold, where they're getting rid of bad actors, where they're agreeing to not hire officers who have a history of misconduct, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He wants to get ahead of that because he's behind the 8 ball. So in order to get ahead of that, he has to announce an executive order. And I guarantee you from this point forward, especially when he's talking on his election campaign, he's going to speak as though this whole initiative was birthed from his efforts.
Yeah, to a certain extent, because like I posted on my Facebook page today, an executive order that was designed and written by a room full of white men, okay? And that's what really pisses me off, okay? All right, they think they're doing the people of the Black community a favor. When you got Jared sitting in the room and Miller, none of these fools have been in Southeast DC or Northeast DC, okay? They don't know how Blacks are living and the struggles that Blacks have, okay? They don't understand it. None of them have been put in the chokehold yet, okay?
That little tiny neck of Stephen Miller, he couldn't even...
I could do that with my thumb and my index finger. Just grab it just like this, okay? But they think they're doing us a favor. They're not doing us a favor. You know, we're, like I said last week, we as Black Americans are tired of having to knee on our neck, okay? It's time that this country takes care of us and takes care of the issues now. Okay? We came out of slavery with nothing, and they're still trying to keep us from having anything. Okay? And so the cycle continues. So they act like they're doing me a favor. You really haven't done me a favor, because that executive order did not take care of none of the issues in the community today.
Mm-mm.
Okay?
Mm-mm.
And don't tell me it did. It was just a daggone opportunity. Believe me, if it was last year, he wouldn't have said nothing, because he's not up for re-election yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's up for re-election now, and then he's acting like he's a savior, you know, like he the Jesus of the community.
Oh no, he'd be talking about, I love trees.
Yeah. Look here, boy up in the White House. We're not part of the white evangelical movement, and thank you, Jesus Christ, okay? So don't get it twisted, okay? You know, because that's what he's doing. He's getting it twisted. You know, and the thing is, like they said today, Congress and the Senate have to work fast, because, like they said, summertime, 4th of July is coming up, and a lot of these guys are going home for the 4th of July. Then what's going to happen when they come back in September after Labor Day? Nothing. Because all of them trying to get reelected, and it's election time. So anything that they pass right now, meaningful legislation to take care of these issues of the police departments in this country, if they don't get it done between now and the 4th of July, which is only a couple of weeks, it's not going to get done.
And I'm reading Derek's comments, and you know, it's one of those rare occasions where he and I are thinking alike, because as he states in his comment, the executive order is smoke in the wind.
Bogus.
It's, you know, the states have the authority to enforce changes in their police force, not the federal government, certainly not the executive branch. So it's smoke and mirrors again. And then you're still going to get the Candace Owens of the world getting up and talking about what a great man the Messiah Drumpf is. It'll get in. He'll sign it. It'll go in a drawer, or probably the shredder, or wherever else he puts files that he doesn't care to ever see again. Because to him, it's a moot issue. Now that he has signed that, there is no racism in the country anymore. Now that he's signed that, there's no problem with the police force anymore.
I tell you, we got a lot of work we got to do. I mean, we got to, in the next couple of months, these shows, we got to start talking about voting, because we really need to discuss that, you know, and move along with that, because there's some real issues happening out here in the red states, you know, when it comes to voting, you know. But you know, this whole thing with police brutality and the way the police departments operate, you know, it's got to be nipped in the bud, okay? And I don't see the protests ending anytime soon.
No, okay? God bless, it won't. But what you are seeing is members of the police force and SWAT quitting. I'm like, good on you.
Yeah.
If you can't acknowledge that there is a problem in the police force, if you can't acknowledge that, then you're part of the problem and you need to be gone. I'm not threatened by the fact you quit. I'm happy. Get to stepping, you know. And then there goes your pension, right? Yeah. Quit. Yeah. Please make my life easier. Make my tax dollars go to somebody who will actually do the job.
But you know, and one thing we got to talk about before, you know, very quickly before we go, is defunding. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people get the definition of defunding mess, you know, really screwed up. I was looking at Fox News in this area last night, the local news. And so they were asking people, because DC has been voting on the budget this week. So people are really riled up, you know. And this one young lady said that the police department won't be right until it's zero, till there is no police department. And I'm saying that some of these people get so screwed up. So you don't want to have a police department, but what are you going to do when all the criminals start running around acting crazy because you don't have a police department anymore?
Well, fortunately, to the best of my knowledge, at least with all the protesters I've seen here in the city and the comments that I've seen, that's a minority view. And I don't mean minority by way of person of color.
Right.
Defunding does not mean eliminating the police force. Right now, and I know police officers, they don't want to go out and deal with mentally ill people. If they're not armed, let a social worker or a hospital deal with that. EMT deal with that. Then if it becomes violent, you can call the police. They're dealing with issues that they're not trained for, nor really do they need to be. So all defunding means is taking money from certain programs right now that are currently under their umbrella and probably mismanaged and used in other areas anyway, like buying military grade crap for their police force, and giving that money instead to social services, EMT, and other services that are better qualified to deal with these situations. It does not mean going from 20 police officers to 2 in your local municipality. That's not what it means.
Right.
And it also doesn't mean funding them to buy tanks and military grade weapons to use against their citizens. That's ridiculous.
I mean, like in a small county like I live in, Charles County, Maryland, the fools got a daggone tank. Why they got one, I don't even know.
Well, you know.
Every once I think the thing is sitting in the yard somewhere getting rusted because they don't have a need for it.
No.
But the militarization of the departments have come about because the Army and the Marines have all this surplus equipment. So what they do, instead of tearing it up, selling for scrap metal, what they do, they sell it to the communities.
I think it's even more insidious than that, because we know that there's a section of the population that fetishizes a notion of a race war. And we know that members of the South have been preparing for that since they lost the Civil War. So in my mind, they're gearing up like the ultimate doomsday preppers, so that if the shit ever does hit the fan, if the thing they both fear and long for does happen by way of a race and class war in this country, they'll have the ammunition, et cetera, that they'll need to wipe out a city or town and pull off another Tulsa massacre or things of that nature. That's how I envision that, because there is no need to have military grade weapons to use against your population unless you envision something like that happening.
Look, they're going to be up the creek if they think they're going to win a race war with black community. I got a friend, an African-American friend, black friend, who's got guns. He got so much stuff in his house. I told him, man, I said, if you trip up in your house, you're going to hurt yourself. I mean, he's got license for everything.
We don't talk about that, right?
Yes, we do. Because I'm advising everybody, if they don't have a gun, get a gun and take the test and concealed weapon test, okay? Don't be caught with your drawers down, okay?
Unfortunately, even with that, though, even with the permit, even with a concealed weapons permit, our people can still get shot. And have.
Yeah. But you know something? I was thinking the other day, what if an individual, be it black or white, felt like they needed to defend themselves against a police officer, and the police officer was definitely in the wrong, okay? And they shot the police officer in self-defense. I wonder how that would go over in the courts.
Well, it depends on whether or not the police officer was white or black. I guarantee you those cases would be handled differently.
And I hope the body cam would be on, the body camera would be on, so it could all be taped. But I'm just wondering sometimes what would happen if the roles were reversed. Because I'm gonna tell you, my feeling is that it's gonna come a time, if they don't stop and get control of these police departments, it's gonna come a time where somebody's gonna argue self-defense and feel and talk about their lives felt threatened, and they're going to kill a police officer. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it actually has happened. But the problem is with the immunity that police officers are considered sacrosanct. Right now, until the law changes, they can do no wrong unless they are caught red-handed with coke all over their face, having stolen it from the room. Evidence room. I know they do, but unless they're caught, and just like with politicians, they get away with shit all the time until they piss off the wrong person. Then suddenly the stuff that they've been doing under the table for years are going to get called out and finally get caught. That's what, so the laws have to change. And I think we're heading in that direction right now. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And maybe once we replace Trump, we'll get some legitimate action on the federal level?
Well, yeah. I mean, I know Derek said a lot of it on the state level, but I think the federal level, depending on who's in office, can really influence the state level too to get
Mhm.
things done. They can work. They can work hand in hand. Okay.
Mhm.
And
Well,
solve.
just like gay marriage. It
Yeah.
started there.
And a lot of these politicians, especially in this administration we have now, they have no desire to make things right. They have no desire to do the right thing. They, on the surface, they trying to look like they're doing the right thing, but in the back room, they say, "Screw it. See how many more blacks you can kill."
Well,
That's
no, I think they're doing what's right for their agenda.
for that base.
Just like when they talk about protecting American citizens, the question I ask myself is, who do you consider American? Who do you consider a citizen? When they talk about doing what's right, my question is, right for who? Because it is subjective, and they clearly have an agenda. And we know that they've never really considered us citizens.
Right. Yeah.
So they can speak the language of equality and not mean anything, because at the end of the day, it's equality for the people that they truly represent, and not the totality of the American diaspora.
Yeah, I guess us and the Indians are tied for last place as far as being citizens or American citizens, okay? Because of the treatment. Like I said, you let people out of slavery and you just say bye to them, but you don't give them anything to get themselves started with. Then when they do establish something such as the Black Wall Street, you destroy it in Greenwood. So we've always been in the bottom of the totem pole, struggling to climb up the totem pole.
Well, I mean, and then you brought up Native Americans. That's a whole nother show. You've got hundreds of women and children gone missing, kidnapped, raped. Mm-hmm. You've got hundreds of thousands of men murdered, unsolved. I mean, you don't want to talk about a community that's underserved and ignored. They definitely have it worse.
Yeah. They go through, that's why they're so bent on having casinos on their land, because that's the only way they can get funding to have decent schools, have decent medical care and things of that nature, because the United States government won't give them the funds that they need.
Well, now you have Trump that's threatening to take away some of their ancestral land. That's contrary to agreements that have been in place for 200 years. I mean, and all of that because he couldn't get his casino back in the day. Again, juvenile, teething toddler. Gee.
I mean, they've always been struggling. Even under the Obama administration, the government still didn't do enough to help the Indians. Okay, these people struggle. Okay, it's like apartheid South Africa. Okay, for Indian reservations, it's sad.
Maybe we can get one on our show. We can find somebody who can speak on their behalf and invite them to the show.
Yeah, that'd be
good. If all of the underserved communities and the marginalized communities were to unite in this country, we'd be in charge. We would get the elected positions. We would have the sheriff positions. We would be the governors and the mayors. But the system of divide and conquer was so successful that they have us fighting each other for the same resources or attention, as opposed to uniting for that.
Yeah.
So I think that could be an interesting show.
Yeah, we've got to work with them. We're all in the same boat. So we're all in the same boat. We need to work together. We need to work together.
Even Tony, who left us high and dry, she needs to work with us too, right?
That's right. I don't know where Tony is. Is that Tony coming back? Oh, there
Tony,
she is.
Is that you?
I've been sitting back listening. Good show.
Hey, look. I think it was Colleen said, buy your gun and move to Maine. Colleen, why do I want to move all the way up to Maine with my gun? There's nothing happening in Maine. What's the population of Maine? 200, 300 people, something like that?
Maine is beautiful. She bought a yurt. She's living out in the middle of nowhere. You can hunt, get your clean water. There's a lot to be said living off the land and getting off script. Sometimes that sounds like a really good idea to me. As long as I can get toilet paper and tea.
Look, I wouldn't ask a day, man. I'll be driving back south, flying. Trying to get to New York City somewhere, or Hartford, Connecticut, or somewhere.
One day I'll go and visit, and I'll do my half of the show from her yurt. How's that, Colleen?
Sounds good. Good show, you guys. I did enjoy.
We sure you did. We didn't see you.
Yeah.
Probably out there smoking, having a drink,
drinking a glass of wine.
Yeah.
No, I had my mango tea.
Oh, okay.
With something in it.
No, it was just mango tea. Remember when I sent you a message, I was just walking through the door.
Mm-hmm.
So I was running way behind. So no, I didn't have a chance to make a cocktail. I didn't have a chance. I poured some mango tea.
We should buy her some of those airplane bottles that she can keep right there on her desk. So when she's running, she's already got everything she needs.
I hear jingle bells.
Hey, Shaw, you gotta remember, Tony came along when the wine of choice was Boone's Farm wine, okay?
That's better than Thunderbird or Cisco. No, that stuff was syrup. That was syrup.
She was Tony, you were a Thunderbird wine drinker, weren't you?
Ooh.
You see how stuff gets started? Watch, it's gonna be a rumor. Ooh, I know she was a drunk. Reggie said it. She started on Thunderbird.
Well, you started the first rumor with the whole baby daddy business, so let's just keep it going.
That's true. That's true.
You know. So what? I have Reggie's forehead and her curly hair. I'm not their love child. No.
Oh boy, I tell you.
Oh my gosh, but really, really a great show. I really did enjoy it. And you know what, Chair, when you mentioned the Native Americans and what they've been suffering through, just like African Americans, this is their land, but, no one ever talks about what they have gone through, what they are going through right now. Yeah. So I'm going to get us a guest, a tribal guest for next week. How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we gotta make sure that we're doing this together. So with that being said, we're going to get out of here. So you've been tuned in to Real World News TV with Reggie Kearney and Jerry Ann Chapin. We really thank you for sitting in with us tonight. We hope that you did get something from the show and you enjoyed it. Make sure that you follow them on Facebook so that you can get show notifications every week of what they're doing, and then they add all kind of stuff in there, what's going on during the weeks. So always here on Tuesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 Central, and 8:30 on the East Coast. Make sure that you head on over to our website as well. Check us out. Got some interesting stuff over there for you as well, including our merchandise. So, did he just say bullshit?
No, he sneezed. He sneezed. You're coughing.
Allergies.
So make sure.
I need one of these with Real World News on it.
I was actually looking at some more stuff.
But if it's not 24 inches, it doesn't count.
Well, I could say something about that, Sharon.
You know what? If you were to say that on Hot Topics Talk Radio, if you were to say that on Hot Topics Talk Radio, we would have laid it out.
Why do you think I'm so pale?
Hey, Tony, get her before you get off. Get her, Tony.
Get her before you get off. Now look at him. You got him doing it now too. You're a pastor. I will remind you.
Oh, look, even Colleen says, "Oh my." So see, I know what's really going on there in New York with 24 inches. See?
Or in her yurt.
Oh my God. But make sure that you do head on over to our website and check out all the shows and make sure that you take a look at some of the past shows. Tomorrow night, come on back with Hot Topics Talk Radio with me, Tony Breedlove, Yvonne Baker, and Chris Smith. Tomorrow night, we have a special guest lined up. Actually, he's someone that comes from the same community I did, doing a documentary. And we're going to have him on at the top of the show. His name is Dion Lee. Also, throughout the rest of that show, what we're going to be talking about is how the COVID-19, the coronavirus, has affected the poverty level. Now you have more people out of work. And now we're all facing poverty like we have never seen before. You know, it's been a long time since this has happened to this country. So that's what's happening tomorrow night on Hot Topics Talk Radio. Again, with me, Yvonne Baker, and Chris Smith. The show starts at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 10 o'clock Central, and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. So I'm hoping that you'll join us. So come on back here to Facebook under Hot Topics Talk Radio. I'm trying to look at comments too. Second wave.
Hi, Jackie. Hi, Colleen.
Yeah. So thank you, Miss Jackie. We appreciate you. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you, Miss Colleen. And thank you, Mr. Derek Terry, for your comments. We enjoyed them. That was the first time I ever heard Sarah Chair say, you guys are on the same page. Imagine that.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, so we're going to get out of here. Thanks again so much for being a part of Real World News TV. We will see you back here next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah, later.
Right?
Thanks.
All right. I'm trying to take
guys.
this banner down here. There we go. All right, so we'll see you back here next week on Tuesday. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, good night, good night.